Hello, everyone. Welcome to Write Something Weird, your favorite literary show where we talk about creating cool art and building bookish communities. I'm Sophie Stern, a paranormal romance author based in Kansas City, and I'm here today with my wonderful guest, Dr. Lindsey Harding, who is also the professor of Pilgrims 2.0. Hello, Lindsey.
Hello.
Also, I said you were the professor of Pilgrims 2.0 and not the author, so correction. I'm really excited to talk about your book today. Um, it's a really unique book with a very interesting topic. You talk about AI and beauty standards and all sorts of really important things that are, I imagine, pretty challenging to write about. But my first question is, how did you start your story? Did you start with the theme or the characters or just the topic in general?
Yeah, I think for pilgrims, it really started with the concept of a
Okay.
plastic surgery cruise. And I was thinking back, and actually, the book started as a class project for one of my first classes at the University of Georgia
Okay.
when I started my PhD program there. And it was a book history class. And as a creative writer in this class, we had the option to do something more creative for our final project. And I
Oh,
thought it would be really fun to turn Chaucer's Canterbury Tales into like a modern beach read kind of
okay.
project. So
That's really interesting. So did you ever imagine like that it would grow to be like a published piece?
I wanted it to be, and I wasn't, but I really wasn't sure about the direction. And the first version, I read it a couple years ago again, and it's not great at all, as you can imagine. And I'm really happy with the direction it's gone on. It has
Yeah.
more depth, and I feel like it's way more interesting now. The characters, the plot. So it's been really fun to think about how far it has come from that first initial idea.
I think that's one of the most interesting things about being a writer is like looking at those early drafts before you like really got to know the world and the characters. Is that kind of how you felt too?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And I tend to write from a concept. Like I like having something a little zany in my head to sort of like ground me when I'm starting to sort of just throw words and
Yeah.
ideas on the page and think about a character. So,
That's really cool. I like that too. So do you write a bunch and then kind of like trim and cut and rearrange?
yes. And and sometimes like even at the level of like a full draft, I
Okay.
think I have done with this book especially, it took 10 years to write.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
I can think through like some major revisions at different stages and because of different feedback over time. But yes, I tend to draft long and then I like pull way back and sharpen and refine and I really love revision. Like it's my favorite part of the
Okay.
process. So once I can get to that point where I have something on the page, and I can start to get some feedback and I can start to
Mhm.
like see a shape really emerge, then I'm in my happy place. I'm like ready to go.
So I really love that you said that. I love feedback too. And I love, like working with editors or, beta readers who are giving me that like honest feedback of this is working, but this maybe fix this part. Um, has it ever been hard for you to receive feedback, or have you always kind of viewed it as part of like just the writer's journey?
No, I mean maybe it's still not even the easiest thing.
Mhm.
Although these days actually I think I'm finally maybe at the point where I'm like, "Oh no, bring it on. I'll take all the feedback."
Let's go.
Yeah, I still remember like my first workshop in my MFA though. And just being I mean I was probably sweating the whole
Oh
time and
no.
it was just like it was a lot because it's so close. Writing's just like so close to our hearts and
Yeah.
souls. And now I think also with like teaching creative writing workshops and working with students too, that has also really helped because, we talk a lot about like how hard it is, but how important it is to get feedback
Mhm.
and to kind of create distance between ourselves and the work so that we can really kind of have the space that we need to do the best work, like what the book demands, what the story demands.
Yeah.
And that has really helped also.
I really love that. So I've taught creative writing for K through 12, And same thing, like I feel like working with students, it's so rewarding, but it's also, it makes me more reflective of my own work as a writer. Because I feel like I'll work with them and I'll like give them advice, and I'm like, maybe I should take some of that for myself.
Yes. Yeah, and I love getting to share like the lessons that have
Yeah.
really stuck with me from like the writers I've worked with. There's this one when I was working with Ellen Slezak for my MFA, she would tell us like keep your butt in the chair. She's like, if
Okay.
you're working, she's like the outside world is always going to try to creep in. There's going to be laundry, there's going to be dishes, but like when you're writing, you have to preserve that time and just keep your butt in the chair. And I say that now to actually my students that I work with, but also faculty too, who are
Yeah.
doing their own like creative or not creative, more scholarly projects.
Okay.
And for I think for any writer, it's that is like one half of like great advice, and the other half is probably like also if you're just struggling over one sentence, maybe get up, take a walk, refill your coffee, come
Yeah.
back, and then things like tend to like click a little bit better.
Yeah.
So both of those things I like to pass on.
I love that. And I think those are both like really good pieces of writing. Like sometimes you just have to sit and be totally focused, but you also have to have that balance of knowing like when do I need to get up and just take a break, get my coffee, breathe, maybe listen to some music and then come back to it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that flexibility with writing is so important. I know, we all have like our rituals and maybe our
Yeah.
preferences when it comes to like where we write, when we write. But one thing I definitely learned in writing this book project, and especially this like a last major revision
Yeah.
where I wrote every day for at least 10 minutes for a whole semester. Uh,
Okay.
was like I just had to do it everywhere. And I spent a lot of time in my car at my kids' sports practices, and I would just like pull up my laptop. I had it with
Yeah.
me all the time. And that was one of the most rewarding experiences just to kind of see like, oh no, I can do this work anywhere at
Yeah.
any time and for any amount of time. And that was just like really freeing for me as a writer.
Yeah.
And I got so much work done. So that was the nice experience just to like have like process wise.
I, I really love that. I feel like a lot of times conversations in writer circles tend to revolve around what's your desk set up and, how do you get in the zone? So I love that you were able to go, I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to let my life get in the way. I'm still going to live, but I'm also going to complete this wonderful project.
Yeah, right. And I love a retreat. Like
Yeah.
early on, I had this incredible opportunity to for like a 2 week writing retreat
Okay.
in like mountains of Tennessee. And
Amazing.
I had young kids at the time, but fortunately I had like, great support to be able to go away. And I thought even I would like come home on the weekend, and then I got there and started writing, and I was like, oh no, I was like, this chance I have. Like
Yeah.
this 2 weeks, I just get to be a writer. And that was also an incredible experience. Like one,
Yeah.
maybe like two of my favorite weeks of my life.
I love that. That's really cool. I can tell like just like how many good memories you have of that. Like that sounds amazing. And I love those communities. I love being part of being around other writers. I feel really energized when I'm around other creatives. Is that how you are as well?
Yes, yeah, definitely. And it's even led me to start a series of writing retreats at the University of Georgia.
Okay.
So now we run two retreats for undergrads every year, two for graduate students, and one for faculty. And yeah, we get, 50 people in the room together, and it's like a beautiful space on campus, and everybody's just like clicking away at their keyboards, and it's great. Like everyone loves it. It's, you're happy, you've got like coffee and bougie snacks, and you get to be surrounded by all these people being so productive. And that, it's really nice for me. I get a lot of work done on those
Oh, I
days too,
bet.
but like facilitating that and getting to see how much other people kind of value that time and space
Yeah.
for writing is really lovely.
Well, speaking of lovely and beautiful spaces, can we talk a little bit about setting on your in your book? Um, I love cruising. I love cruises. I love the ocean, but I also feel like they can be a little bit scary. And I didn't realize this until I was being interviewed one time and someone said, "Why are you so scared of the ocean?" Because I've written many stories where like I wrote zombies on a cruise ship one time and like things like that. But what drew you to going like this is where I want this to take place. I want this to be this isolated location. How did you make that decision?
Yeah, I think it maybe like two things happened.
Okay.
One, I was in this way that I usually do, where I like watch kind of ridiculous reality television as sort
Okay.
of a thing to check, to like kind of check out, or if I have,
Hmm.
some menial work to do or laundry, I just like to have a background noise show
For
on.
sure. Yeah.
And so, Real Housewives is like among my
Mhm.
favorites there.
Yeah.
And I think, I was like watching that a little bit more intensely than I usually do.
Okay.
And then kind of getting ready to start my PhD program. And then I was like trying to think of like what I wanted to do for this like book project. And then I think I'm not exactly sure what happened, but I thought about like having like a destination thing for plastic surgery. I
Okay.
just like fascinated by the idea of plastic surgery and like
Yeah.
and what you could do with it. And I have a couple doctors in my family. They're
Okay.
anesthesiologists, not plastic surgeons. But like medical adjacent stuff is always like fascinating, has been fascinating
Yeah.
to me. And then I might have even gotten the idea just in conversation, like talking about it with some friends. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, what if we put the surgery on the cruise? Like, what if
Yeah.
it's not the boat takes you? Oh, I think that was it. Someone sent me an article about like a destination thing where people take a cruise, they go to a foreign country, they have plastic
Okay.
surgery, they come back. And I was like, no, no. What if it happens on the boat? Like we're
Mhm.
not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Um, and then I also like I love the idea of like cruise ship as container for like
Oh,
story and like because of the like tight spaces and the cord like having things like be close quarters. I was like that sounds great for conflict. Uh,
yeah.
and then I also love the writer Stephen Millhauser.
Okay.
Uh, and he's done some of my favorite stories of his. He like takes a place or like a dress of a woman's or like a mall and he like explores different layers and makes it something that can't possibly hold all of these things, but it does.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting.
and I have, ever since I came across his work, I've wanted to do that. And I was like, oh, well, a cruise ship can hold a lot, but what if it can hold even more? And like, I can like push the bounds of like what's possible on this boat. And that's where I think I was thinking a lot about like the different types of walking paths and like
Mhm.
putting like a mall and a cemetery and a park and all of these like surgery suites onto the boat. I was like, oh yeah, well, I can definitely make that happen. And that's like
Yeah.
the beauty of fiction.
Oh, absolutely. Wait, I love that. I can make that happen. I love that. And I think it's so cool, like how many wonderful stories come out of that kind of attitude. I feel like it's a really healthy attitude for a writer to have.
Yes, and that's maybe the thing that I loved best about this project and anytime
Mhm.
I write is like surprising myself.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think, and maybe that is why my work kind of leans like speculative because I like being able to sort of cast out a little bit from our like
Yeah.
reality into like an adjacent possible or even like a far a possible.
Yeah.
And I
I
even
love that. Oh,
with
go
like
ahead.
the
Sorry.
AI, oh, sorry, like the AI on the boat,
Yeah. Mhm.
I started it like this project like 10 years ago. So ChatGPT wasn't
Yeah.
around and we didn't have the technology we did. And I actually got this idea from some feedback from a grad school colleague of mine, Robbie Nadler. He generously like read a whole terrible draft early on and he was like, I love the boat. He's like, but what if it was like a character? Like more, like lean into that more. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay. And then I was like, AI, definitely.
Yeah.
And then I kind of, and I've always been like kind of tech fascinated and like
Hmm.
interested in things like that. So I was like, great. And that sort of like clicked a lot of things into place. Uh,
Yeah.
And it was interesting, even in the latest revision I had to do right before we went to publication, I had to
Mhm.
update some of the technology because we'd already passed the point that I thought we might be at. So I
Oh,
had to like push
wow.
it a little further out.
That's really interesting. I love that. I really enjoy sci-fi, but I think sci-fi writers and like speculative fiction writers, it's so interesting to see like what our minds come up with and how that parallels reality. I love that you had to jump ahead.
Yeah. And maybe, we don't have like fully autonomous like cruise ships right now, but we actually probably could. And I think the
Yeah.
recent developments in artificial intelligence are definitely kind of like tracking with some of the ideas that I had. And that has been super interesting to kind of see
Yeah.
and to think about like what that means too in terms of like the bleeding between reality, fiction, futuristic thinking, innovation, all of those
Yeah.
kind of spaces and how they, collide and overlap at different times.
Absolutely. So, along those lines, but also shifting more into like the back end of things, I know that you said during like the editing and publishing process, like you did have to kind of push that tech a little bit. Did anything else surprise you about publishing your book or just the process of publishing in general?
Yeah, I think maybe the biggest surprise for me with publishing was I thought that once I queried and had an agent for the book, that it was done. Like the book was like,
Oh,
and I know
Lindsay.
that, yeah, I know. Uh, and maybe that's because, the instruction that I had received was like, okay, this is the process. You query these
Mhm.
agents,
Yeah.
you got your query letter and you send it out and then fingers crossed. And that was
Yeah.
kind of where like the conversation ends because actually if things don't go past that point, it's like, well, is there a next step?
Yeah.
And I did that once I had a solid draft, and I had this great agent for a time with a great name, Kent Wolf. And he tried really hard to sell it, and he didn't.
Okay.
Um, and that was kind of devastating, but
Yeah.
also it did like make me kind of like think and reflect on the book. And I was like, no, I'm not ready to like let it die. Like I'm not
Yeah.
ready to put it in a drawer just yet. And so then I started thinking about like university presses and small presses. And that led me to Acre Books ultimately. Sort of, I
Yeah.
had like kind of tried a couple other options first, had sent some stuff out, and then reading about the fiction editor, Nicola Mason, and like what, she was like looking for. I thought it could be a really good fit for them.
Yeah.
Uh, what's interesting though is, and actually I don't know if I've ever talked about this publicly before, but I do tell people this story is that they almost passed on it. And I found out, Nicola, I think, told me one of the readers, Maggie Sue, who actually just had a book come out, Blob.
Okay.
She was at the Georgia Review at the time, or she was like living in Athens, actually. I didn't know her,
Yeah.
but she was like living in my town, but she was working
Okay.
for Acre Books. And she was like an early reader on the book. And she told Nicola, she was like, no, she's like, please don't pass on this. Give it a read. Uh,
Wow.
so because of her encouragement, then Nicola did like give it a full read. She sent me feedback, and then that's what motivated that semester-long epic revision that I did.
Wow.
And that feedback actually, like all of those notes, everything Nicola said, I was like, yes. I was like, yes. I knew the book needed something. And it turns out it needed Nicola's feedback. And that
Yeah.
really kind of pulled all the pieces together
I bet.
and like the storylines and kind of helped me massage things. I made major changes even at that stage.
Mhm.
Uh, but then by the end, we had a book that in December, I got this insane email that she was like, it's coming out. It's going to be on this, the fall 2024 list. And
Yeah.
I thought I had like, like melted into a puddle or something.
Yeah. That's, was that just the best feeling?
Yes. Yes.
I love
Yeah.
that. Well, you work so hard, and it's so interesting to hear about writing is fun. And a lot of us know that writing is fun, but it's also a lot of work. And it's a lot of work for a long time. So it's really interesting to hear about what that process looked like, how many different people were able to approach your project and make these recommendations or these little tweaks that made it such a stronger story.
Yeah, and I think that is maybe like the overarching lesson I learned from this. Like,
Yeah.
yes, it's like one sort of like my idea, but like also no, like this book is like intensely collaborative, and kind of pulling ideas from different feedback over different years,
Mhm.
different things happening in the world, people coming into my life. Uh, and so seeing all of that, it's interesting to think about this boat also as like kind of holding all of, these stories of these women and the characters on the boat, but then
Yeah.
also like all of my life experiences and things that I've gotten from other people on this journey too.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting to use the word journey too, because I think that's such a great way to describe like the process of writing and being a writer and living as a writer. Speaking of living, you're busy. You're a parent, director of the writing intensive program at Georgia, at University of Georgia. Is that right?
Yeah.
And you write short fiction, and you wrote books. You write a book. What how do you find balance? What do you have balance? How can I get some? What does that look like?
I mean, at times, yes, and I'm writing more, and at other times, and recently maybe this is true, not as much. I just had my oldest graduating from high school, and so like the school year's ending,
Yeah,
and the semester's ending. So am I writing a lot now? No. I did write though one day in the past like month, and that felt so good.
I bet it did.
And I've got some like plans to do some writing over the summer.
Cool.
And at different times, I'm able to kind of like carve out that time.
Mhm.
One thing I have tried that I really like is sort of monetizing it a little bit.
Okay.
So doing the like writing every day as the practice, but then when I didn't write for the day, I would have to give my daughter like $5 via Venmo. And that was like, that kept me writing for 2 months.
I
And
bet. I
I
bet.
did have to give her $15. But like there are some days where it's like 11 o'clock at night, and I was like, I could open my laptop right now, or I'm gonna have to send her another cup of coffee. And
Yeah.
I was like, no, I'm gonna write today. So
I love that. Did she ever try to like distract you from writing, or was she pretty supportive?
no, she's pretty supportive. She
Okay.
actually, she just graduated from high school, but she has a novel draft. She wrote a
Oh,
book as her capstone project. She will come to writing retreats with me. Last summer, we did like a week in Florida together as a writing retreat. Uh,
okay.
and like speaking of like special memories, that is something, that week was just like so special. Like we had our
Yeah.
plan, we had our food, we had our times to write, we like checked in with each other. We were doing some reading and some like exercising to like,
Yeah.
still be moving. And it was lovely, like getting to share this experience, like with both of us, like in the writing life.
Yeah.
It was great.
I love that. No, that sounds so great. And I feel like when you're in that great headspace and you have that community and you're with another writer, I feel like you're able to produce better work.
Yes, I think so too. You're right. Like I was more organized during that
Yeah.
week than sometimes I am. Uh, yeah.
Yeah. I love that. So your daughter wrote a book. You wrote a book. You've also written a lot of short fiction. What's the biggest difference for you with short fiction versus like writing something longer? Was it a similar process or is there a big difference?
Actually, so what's really interesting is the differences sort of became fewer, I think.
Oh, okay.
And what I mean by that is, because I'm so busy, sometimes it's
Mhm.
harder for me to hold like a longer kind of sustained plot line in my
Oh
head.
yeah.
It
Hmm.
just, it's that was hard for me. But as soon as I had this idea to kind of with Pilgrims to use like short chapters and like bounce between perspectives a little bit more,
Okay.
that was really helpful because I could hold all of those like smaller pieces in my head. And then I was like, oh, I'm just writing a lot of little stories and then threading things together. And I
Hmm.
loved that kind of work. I crochet occasionally, and I was like, ooh, this is
Okay.
like me, like weaving or knitting together these like
Interesting.
tiny stories. And it's cool how like the form worked with my life, like with my writing life. But I also like really like the form also. Like there was like a nice sort of like synergy there.
Yeah. That's amazing. And I love that you were able to kind of approach like the chapters with, I'm just writing a story. Like it can be short and tight, and then it's all going to come together.
Yes, and that was helpful because I think early on I was just intimidated about a
Oh,
book.
yeah.
And coming out of my PhD even, I had some pages, but nothing like book like. And I was like, who's going to want to read like another book? And how am I going to possibly do this? Like,
Everyone wants to read another
I
book.
know. I know. I was, it's like the things you say to yourself
Yeah,
to like avoid working on the book.
for sure.
And so but then, ultimately I was like, oh, wait, this is how I can do this. It's just like, yeah, one tiny chapter at a time. And that made it doable for me in a way that I didn't think was possible. And even now, like when I go to like writing more short stuff,
Yeah.
which I've got a couple stories too, it's interesting. Like I feel like I kind of think about that sort of structure also, and like scenes even like in these like different units. I'm like trying to like break things down into smaller units. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
a story, just gonna like weave together a couple scenes.
I love that. I think that's such a healthy way of approaching it too. Like there's a big idea and a big project, and when you think like, oh, I have to write a book, like that's a little overwhelming. So breaking it down, I think, is a really great place to go to mentally, just so that you like can hype yourself up and you can make it happen.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
So, my last question for you before we say goodbye, what was your favorite thing about writing Pilgrims?
One, there's so many favorite things, but if I
Okay,
had to
yeah, of
pick
course. I
one,
know. Unfair question.
yes. One thing I really loved was because my so I have a twin sister and
Okay.
her, that really informed like the character Annalie in the book.
Mhm.
But she's an anesthesiologist, and so is my mom. And
Okay.
when we're together, we like to go on walks or just like hang out. And they would like slip into these like conversations about medicine. And one thing I loved about the book was like, this was my in. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, now let's talk about medicine, but can you guys help me think about how we could have women undergoing surgeries for hours and hours? Like what kinds of like what kind of anesthesia would they need?
Oh, interesting.
And so it became this like way for me to connect with these women and like get involved in this conversation and also like leverage like their expertise
Mm.
for the work that I was doing. And I like one of my fondest memories, like I loved just kind of texting them like little snippets and being like, hey, does this make sense from a medical standpoint?
Yeah.
And then getting their take on it and then, making edits and revisions. Uh, and yeah, so I think that kind of using the book as a way to connect with my mom and sister was really special.
Wait, I love that. What a perfect answer. I hope they watch this and they feel so warm and fuzzy inside. That's really sweet.
I know, me too.
This has been wonderful. Thanks so much for coming and talking to me about your writing and your journey in this creative process. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, well, have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.